Cool. So, I want to welcome Mason, everybody. I don't have an introduction prepared for Mason, but when I went on Mason's website, it's like, what does he not do, and what gigs can he not get? That's what I want to know. How do you get those gigs? I'm a professional saxophonist turned studio engineer, sound guy, um, by necessity, and I am a professional saxophonist, and I have a degree in interactive media arts from Brooklyn College, doing a lot of that stuff, and so I'm a multimedia guy as well. I really love your work, checking it out, and this isn't your first time at Montserrat, as I know.
No, I did a guest lecture last year as well.
That's awesome. And so, uh, how did you meet? Did you meet Blythe somehow?
God, first time that I had any kind of association with Montserrat, purely by accident. I'm a huge proponent of game jams and global game jam.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a great thing to do to keep your skills up, great way
Yeah.
to make new friends, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I ended up being really busy and distracted in, I think, in the 2018 session, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I forgot to register for my usual jam site. I used to live in the Boston area.
Ah.
I would normally always go over to like Northeastern because that was like right near my apartment. And
Right.
I forgot to do it before it filled up, at which point I needed to find another jam site. And Montserrat was the closest one that seemed to have some space open and looked like it had a decent number of participants. So I decided, screw it. I was driving out to Beverly. Let's go. Let's see what happens.
Nice.
And ended up being fun. I met, God, what's his name? The previous sound professor who's on the sabbatical.
John Bellini.
John, yeah. I met John Bellini during that.
Mm-hmm.
We got along decently. And they ended up inviting me to come and do a lecture, basically, the next, in the fall. I guess this would have been 2019 Game Jam,
Nice.
because they invited me in the fall, like 6-7 months later or something.
Right.
I think they connected the dots, and they were like, "Oh yeah, if you're down, we'll make the thing happen."
Yeah, at that jam, did you meet Sarah Eldridge? You remember, short person?
Yeah.
Sarah?
I remember.
She's one of my artists at my art collaborative, and I was just speaking to her earlier today. She's helping with some logo art and branding and stuff.
I think that I worked on one of her games.
Yeah, I think she said she like one of those make a game in a day or something.
Yeah, that's what a game jam is. That's
sweet.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You have 48 hours and you just make something.
That's awesome.
And usually there's like a theme involved. Most of the stuff that you make is complete and utter garbage, but like 1 out of every 1,000 is decent. And more important than whether or not you actually make something good is that you're building relationships with people, you're making friends, you're networking.
Yeah.
You're kind of building up your skill set in doing work really quickly, all of which are tremendously valuable in securing work in your future career.
Absolutely. Let's have a show of hands from the classroom. Who's done one of these game jam things? I'm not raising my hand. I haven't done it. One. All right. Taryn, you're on the right track. See, that's the track to success. A lot of people don't have their cameras on,
It's all right.
Freedom of expression.
We'll just imagine what they all look like.
Right
now I'm picturing a lot of like vaguely black to dark gray voids with white text on their names.
That's what I picture.
That's what most of them look like.
Yeah.
So probably not that far off from what I'm seeing.
Right.
But to do a quick self-introduction before we jump into things. Hi, everyone. My name is Mason Lieberman. I am the Senior Game Audio Coordinator at Tencent. And before I was with Tencent, I was primarily a freelance composer, producer, and recording artist, working mostly in the anime industry, followed by video games in general, TV, film, multimedia across the board. Some of my favorite projects, in no particular order, I've worked on the soundtracks for games like Super Smash Brothers and League of Legends. I've worked on the Beyblade franchise, RWBY, Tower of God, Rising of the Shield Hero. I've collaborated with artists like TAEYEON, formerly of Girls' Generation, Yoko Kanno, Yuki Hayashi, Kevin Penkin. I've worked on TV shows like The Walking Dead, worked on all kinds of random stuff, basically. But I've always been very passionate about art-forward projects, and especially animation-forward projects. At least for me as a musician, I find animation to be one of the most exciting mediums to work with. So I'm a huge fan of any opportunity I get to collaborate with artists in those kinds of ways. And I think the same is true of a lot of musicians.
Remind me, when did you graduate Berkeley?
2015, actually. So not as long ago as you would think.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2015. I got a master's degree slowly while I was working over the next 3-ish years, something like that. And I'm on faculty at a university down in Texas, technically. So I do teach as well.
That's where you got your master's, right?
Yeah, I do like one class per week down there because I don't really have the time to do anything else. But I wanted to be like, teaching is something I'm super passionate about. So any opportunity to do talks or things like that, I always take because I just love doing it. It's kind of the drill. But either way, it is a pleasure to meet all of you.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. Any questions for Mason before he jumps into whatever he's jumping into?
Very interesting. I was told this was going to be a Q&A.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
it is.
It's all right. I have
Mason, I can ask you questions till the cows come home. Don't worry about that.
We'll make it work then. You
don't need to worry about it. We got plenty of questions for you. And it could be as easy, I do this all the time with special guests. Some people have PowerPoints prepared. Some people are just asking the students questions. Some people are fielding questions, and some people are like, check out my website, so
I'm good to go as far as there's plenty of stuff I can talk about. I just don't know what your students have been focusing on.
Yeah, so let me tell you
context on that'll probably help me guide.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're okay. So some just backdrop COVID. So we meet every day on Zoom. Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons from 3:40 to 6:20 on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons on Zoom, and so the challenge is that I'm not walking around the classroom looking over their shoulders. Can't help the students that way. So we just share screen on Zoom, and some people are in Pennsylvania on their laptop, doing it all remotely. Some people are living on campus in Montserrat and have access to the professional recording gear there. So we're kind of working to cater it towards what resources they have. We're all building sound effects libraries where they kind of have to harvest 5 to 10 sound effects each week with whatever resources they have. Go into the studio, do some Foley sounds, harvest the sounds outside. Everybody has the Adobe suite, which comes with going to an art school. It's what you get for free. So we're using Adobe Audition primarily. Some people have Mac GarageBand, and some people have access to better, but we use a lot of Adobe. So some assignments we've done so far is noise reduction, reverb, and we're kind of just getting into sends and buses and trying to grasp that. And then also just doing impact sounds and kind of juicing up those Foley sounds to get really the most out of making something sound larger than life, and kind of getting into the sound effects side of things. Some students, and they all have the kind of choose your own adventure assignments throughout the class, 6 assignments that they assign themselves, ranging from I'm going to do a multi-track, song to, some sound effects using MIDI if they have access to that, to soundscape assignments, and then we haven't decided what our final projects yet are for the class, but those will be group, 3 groups probably of our class configured into different groups. And so, we'll probably decide that at the, during midterm. So yeah, so that's kind of like where we're at. And today, after we visit with you, we're going to have a sound effects battle royale. We're going to see how that works with Discord, and everybody's going to have like, a contest who can play the best sound effect, because we're just trying to like,
Interesting.
get a little, loosen up a little bit. So yeah, so that's where we're at. Some people have musical training in this class. Some people are just naturally good at using GarageBand to make songs because it's fun, and loops and stuff. And then and so we have the whole gamut. And a lot of us are working on senior thesis projects, which is a thesis at Montserrat is your senior year. You embark on a year-long project that is like an animation or a and that's for animation majors especially tackle that their senior year. So if anybody wants to share about your senior project, please, you want to ask Mason a question about that. Maybe this would be a good chance to, yeah.
By all means.
Yeah.
I think then I've got a pretty decent idea of perhaps what I think I want to talk about. Before I go forward, I have one quick question for all of you, because I know you're all multidisciplinary artists. You have different focuses. If you could all jump into the chat right now and type what your personal focus is, whether it's animation, you want to be in games, you want to be in film, comics, whatever it is, just drop what your thing is. That way I have a good idea of where everyone's going.
Nice.
And then from there, I can kind of make sure that I talk about the field that you would like to go into. Because one of the benefits of working in music is that you have a tendency to work with a very wide range of artistic disciplines, which can give you the opportunity to talk about a lot of it.
I'm going to grab my headset. I'll be right back.
All right. Fantastic. Oh, man, this is going to be fun. So different than last year's lecture. Let's rock, guys. So as you know, my personal history is video games, animation, multimedia, film, TV, everything. So I can talk a little bit about all of these different fields and kind of how some of them differ, and in particular, how your relation to music and sound is going to differ depending on where you go and what you work with. And I know that given my particular background, I can also spend at least a little bit of time for the animation folks talking about the anime development process and some of the ways that that differs compared to Western animation and what we do in like Western studios, out in Burbank or things like that. But to first talk about kind of where I came from and how I went from college into the professional world. And also, I have 2 cats. They will probably just show up periodically. You've been given notice. They are very adorable.
Nice.
As I said earlier, I graduated in 2015, which in the grand scheme of things really isn't that long ago. I graduated from Berkeley out in Boston, so just like you guys, I went to an arts-focused institute, and I don't have a ton of experience. They're right here, dude. They're literally right behind me. I have the exact same experience as probably a lot of you of going to an arts institute without too much of a liberal arts focus, comparatively speaking. Like, you're really focused on the thing that you do. And you're relatively far removed physically from whatever industry you're going to go. Because, musically speaking, the music industry isn't in Boston. The arts industry, the animation industry, game development aren't really in Beverly. So no matter what, you're kind of going to be staring down the barrel of this, I'm building a set of skills thing, but I'm nowhere near where I probably need to be to execute on it, unless the internet's a lot more effective than I think, which depending on how effective you think it is, congratulations, it is. When I graduated from Berkeley, I was what I will politely describe as one of the less successful of my classmates, in that I did not manage to secure an internship. I did not have a job lined up day one, and I wasn't coming from some super well-connected family or background that gave me access to like a pre-existing opportunity that I wouldn't have to like make my way into somehow. But I did end up with pretty decent employment about 3 months after graduation. However, that started through things that I'd been doing when I was still in college. My first job out of college was working for Rooster Teeth on an animated series they produced called RWBY, RWBY. And I ended up working on the soundtrack for that because I knew the lead composer. However, I never had classes with the lead composer. He was a faculty member at my university. I never studied with him. I never had classes with him. I only knew of him originally because a friend of mine had shown me his music while I was still an undergrad and shown me this rock song that he'd done as the opening for the first season. It was like, hey, check this out. And I was like, oh, this song's really good. And my friend was like, hey, the drums are fake though. And me being like, you know, a little 18-year-old who didn't know anything about music production or sequencing was just like, what? Like, how do you do that? If you don't go into a studio with a real human drummer, how are you going to record drums? That's impossible. And so, of course, with all the bravado that being an 18-year-old provides, I sent an email to said professor, and I was just like, hey, I know I'm not actually in any of your classes, but could I just show up for office hour and ask some questions about drum production? I'm really confused by something you apparently did, and I'd love to learn a little more about it. And being a low-key guy, he was like, yeah, sure, whatever, show up. And that began what ended up being a 2.5 year friendship where I would just hang out in his office like every single week, even though I didn't have classes, because I learned a shit ton from it. What ended up happening is, even though I was never his student, we built a pretty good relationship over time, and he basically invited me to do some live performances with him down in Austin for the Rooster Teeth convention, RTX. And then ultimately, when I graduated from school, after 3 months of not having a job and announcing on Facebook, like all successful graduates, that I guess it was time for me to apply for a job at Guitar Center, because that's just kind of what you do if you're a Berkeley graduate without a job. He messaged me saying, hey, I don't see why you should be working at Guitar Center when you could be working for me. And that was how I got my first job. I worked with Rooster Teeth for about 1.5 years, effectively, from before I really graduated a little bit into the period after season 3 ended. And then once I finished that, I went full-time freelance and basically never looked back. I worked as a composer and recording artist on a ton of random titles, and about 9 months after I finished RWBY, with work being relatively sparse, I ended up booking the Beyblade franchise, and I became a series composer for Beyblade, which, for those of you who were alive in the 1990s, it's the people throwing those like spinning tops in anime going, let it rip. And for the rest of you who don't remember 9/11, terrible kids TV show, just absolutely horrendous. But a lot of fun to work on. The music was great. And the animation's fine. You can check it out on Netflix if you really have nothing to do today. But that was kind of what my first year or so post-grad looked like. Mostly, I was unemployed for a lot of it. I didn't have a ton of work opportunities. Is that a peach? I don't know. Our peach buddy looks like he's coughing up a storm. Are you okay, Keith? Really not sure if this is a real human or not.
Yeah, I'm good.
God, that's terrifying. Jesus. Do not look at the peach. Got it. Sorry. But in general, I found that while I had learned a lot of things in college, while I felt like I had studied music well, or whatever that means, I don't know that I was really ready for postgraduate life at that point. And there are kind of a couple of lessons that now, having worked for a few years, I feel like I really wish I had known that would have made that transition a lot easier for me. And the first of those is that however fast you think you work right now is not fast enough. Professional standards are infinitely more difficult by and large than whatever standards you're likely being placed under academically and at school. As a generic example, Dennis mentioned the 5 sound effects per week thing. In the professional world, that would be more like 15 sound effects per day or more. I know that back when I was in college, I used to brag and think, oh, I can write music so fast. I would run speed writing events as an RA and say, oh, learn how to write quickly. I can write 2 minutes a day. And then the first time that I went on a project that required me to do 15 minutes of music in one day, I was like, oh, these are not the same thing whatsoever. This is not the same standard of what I should be expecting myself to do.
All right, guys. Now you have to do 15 sound effects a day. Just
Congratulations. Kidding. I'm so sorry.
Just kidding.
This is not my fault. I hold no responsibility for this. But just, again, like, you have to work really quickly, and you have to be able to build up a high quality in spite of that limitation. Something really important to remember as you begin to build your career, whether it's in animation or games or anything else like that, your reputation is only as strong as the last thing that you did. If you ever do something that sucks, if you do bad work, then it doesn't matter how many years you spent working on that thing. It doesn't matter how many people you met in the process of it, how many friends you built up. If the people who worked on you on that project cannot recommend you to their friends and to other projects and clients based on the work you did on that, that may as well have been dead time. It doesn't matter if you were getting paid for it. You weren't actually building your career for it. And your career, at the end of the day, is basically an exponential growth built off of referrals. Whether or not you're going to have a career in art or in music or in sound or in animation, in design, in game development, whatever, is pretty much 100% based on your ability to happen into a piece of work, do it successfully, and for the people who you worked on that with to say, yeah, this person didn't suck. And the more enthusiastically they think that you didn't suck, the better. Because there are definitely varying degrees from, oh yeah, they did the job well, they're fine, to this is the person who I will think of every single time someone mentions animation because they were that good. And I'll be honest, if you're not that person, it's really, really hard to build up a career, because at the end of the day, like I said, this is an exponential factor. And how many people remember you and how thoroughly they remember you is almost entirely based on the combination of your personality and how effectively you do the job. This also kicks off kind of an interesting point that I know I've sometimes found people disagree with, but that I found is part of why I think my career has happened to develop with the speed that it did, which is that a lot of people are going to tell you, say yes to every job, take every opportunity, because you can't guarantee that you'll do it. I'm going to put a big asterisk on that and say, take every opportunity that you will be the best at. There is very little point, at least in my opinion, if you're looking at this as a long tail industry, which it absolutely is, statistically speaking, the people who are successful in the arts are the people who keep getting to do the arts. Most people just don't have the ability to generate an income long-term doing this. And the average industry, or the average career for an animator, I want to say, in America, I think it's 3 years, 4 years. Like, that's how long it takes for them to burn out or lose the ability to get work, or otherwise just, fall out of the industry for whatever reason. The people who stick around, the people who do good work consistently long term, are the people who put themselves in positions to do the best work they can. And this means that if you hate a project, if a project doesn't inspire you, if the work that you're going to do on this is mediocre, it's bare minimum, it's whatever gets the job done in order to get the paycheck, you're not actually building your career in that time. You are getting paid, you are subsisting, you are not developing, you are not proceeding professionally in a forward momentum. The end result is that I often find that some of the people who we look at who are the most successful, we often kind of think, wow, they don't seem to have done as many jobs as you would think they should have for the size and quality of whatever credits they have. But often the thing that we're missing and that we're not noticing is just how well they did every one of those jobs prior and how important they were in the execution of that project every single time. If you are the person who your animation is getting called out in every single review of the game that you work on every time, you're going to start to build a reputation, and your reputation is the thing that gets you hired. There's a lot of talk when you're in college of demo reels and of what do you turn in for an audition process. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't made a new demo reel probably since like 2 years after I graduated. I've started plenty of new projects, plenty of new gigs, gotten hired for plenty of stuff, and in particular, major brand AAA stuff. But I almost never actually get asked to demo reel at this point, mainly because I'm getting hired off reputation, and I'm getting hired off referrals, and I'm getting hired by people who've known my work in some way from something I previously did. And that's not a, oh, look at Mason, this is special thing. That's just how it works for everyone. That's the way the industry is. And it doesn't mean that you'll absolutely never have to demo reel, but it does mean that by and large, it is one of the least important, I would say, skills compared to actually doing your job competently. Now, what does doing your job competently mean in this case, to just make sure we're 1,000% clear? I think we've done a decent job of kind of defining it, but to go over, it is any situation where you can guarantee that these people would not only hire you again, but would refuse like the opportunity to work with other people over the opportunity to work with you. You want to be that person who's so good that they're starting to just refer you for things you don't actually do because they think that you could do them. I cannot tell you how often I get referred for voiceover work and for sound design work, despite the fact that those aren't actually what I do. Those have very little to a certain degree to do with me. It's kind of the equivalent, if you're an animator, of someone being like, oh, well, he has like a really cinematic eye, so like, I bet he would be awesome at like cinematic editing. Like, he's an animator. It's kind of the same thing, right? And you're like, I mean, I know about it. I know people who do it. Like, it's not really the same thing. Dennis asks, do you have to turn down work now? Do you have to go through Tencent for all your gigs, or do they let you take outside work? Fortunately, Tencent lets me do outside work with a very specific non-compete. And I actually am really appreciative of how this is defined. Without getting too into the nitty-gritty of my contract, basically my employment says that I cannot do for other companies what I do for Tencent. And they are incredibly specific, which basically means I can compose music for other clients, I can record for other clients. I basically cannot audio direct or manage departments for other Chinese companies. Basically, their non-compete clause pretty much says, please don't work for NetEase. Just don't do it. Like, we're asking you, we know they want to hire you because they try to steal everyone who works for us. Just don't do it. That's it. That's all we want. You can do whatever you want, We swear to God, just don't take the money.
So if someone approaches you and said, "Oh yeah, I want you to do this very specific work that, and you're like, that might be part of my non-compete, just call Tencent." Do you ever do that? You're like, just call them. No.
If I don't think that I can do it,
then you just
I'm just going to refer someone who I think can.
Absolutely.
That's
good. That's
part
good
of
business
the
practice right there.
Too.
Yeah.
You don't have to get every single gig to get benefit from every single gig. At the end of the day, you are going to benefit when your network is successful. You should never really feel like you're competing against other artists or musicians or creative types, because at the end of the day, when you're supportive of your community, they're going to be supportive of you. When you're out there being the kind of person who refers friends for gigs when you know they're a better fit for it than you are, you're going to be the person who they remember when they're referring gigs. And I guarantee you, statistically, every one gig that you refer someone else to is 2 gigs that you're going to get down the road, because you're going to refer them for something, they're going to return the favor, and the person that you work with on that returned favor may also then return something to you later on down the road. Like I said, it's all exponential. It's always going to be beneficial for you to help your community. So those are kind of some of the initial things that I really wish I'd known back when I was graduating. The other thing, which kind of goes with the exponential thing, is something that people did tell me, but maybe I was just too dumb to really register. And that's that it takes time. It really, really takes time. And while I'm only, 5 years out from college, that may not seem like a long time. I guarantee you, it feels like it when you're 2 or 3 months into not having any work, wondering how you're going to pay rent in 3 days. It always feels like it's been a long time at that point. You're going to find that everything has a longer tail than you think. And that includes relationships that you're building right now in your undergrad. You're going to work, and I will literally, I'll bet money on it right now. I would take $100 bet. Within the next 10 years, you will, one of you in this room will work on a paid project that pays you a living wage with someone else in this room. Someone else is going to end up giving you work, or you're going to be the person who gives them work. And you're going to realize that even if you literally hadn't talked to each other in 7 years, the people who you were friends with will still end up being valuable assets over that course of time. As a generic example, when I was in undergrad, before I transferred to Berkeley, when I first started in Texas, I had a friend named Lance he was like a senior when I was a freshman. We were friends that 1 year. He went off to USC for grad school. I went on to graduate from another school. Whatever. We got along well. We did one dinky student project together when he was still at school, where I played the world's shittiest guitar on his project. And I'm a much better guitarist nowadays, but I sure wasn't back then. But, when you're in college, you don't have to be the best at your thing because you're learning how to do your thing. But fast forward 5 years, I had worked on the RWBY soundtrack, and Lance called out of the blue to say, "Hey, do you still play guitar? I know you work on anime stuff. I just got a gig working on Beyblade, and we need a guitarist." And that's what started the track leading to me working on the Beyblade soundtrack as a composer, which was a much larger gig then. The unspoken kind of B-moral of that particular story is that any opportunity to do anything is an opportunity to expand your role and step into bigger opportunities with that project. People do not judge based on how important the work you did for a given company was. They don't care as much. Well, they care, but it's not the same thing. No one's going to be out here saying, well, if you weren't the creative director, you don't matter. When people are looking to determine who they can trust and who has a reputation, they are looking for track record with companies. And what I mean by that is they want to see that you have been trusted with multi-million-dollar IPs, that you haven't broken your NDAs, that you've delivered your work on time and on budget. And at that point, it doesn't really matter, and I'll answer that question in a second. It doesn't really matter if you are the in-between artist animator, or if you are the keyframe animator, or if you're the storyboard artist, or if you're the creative director. If you did your job properly and you were on that team properly, everyone on that team will be able to vouch for you and say, oh yeah, they were on this show and they nailed it. They were great. So that's kind of how you start to build that reputation and that name. It doesn't matter if you start as the intern or whatever. You're going to still be able to build up your reputation if you are taking it seriously and doing the best work possible at all times. As for what is an NDA, by the way, an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement, very common piece of paperwork in all forms of creative media, as well as in most businesses, frankly, basically saying that you cannot share proprietary technology or information. You won't reveal the release of an unannounced project. You won't show how a project is being developed, how things are being made. You will not reveal any information that could impact the sales of that particular project in a way that could damage the business prospects of that company. And a kind of interesting thing that I'd like to point out, because I'm the senior audio coordinator for Tencent, so NDAs are one of the many lifebloods I deal with all the time. And IP is intellectual property. Think anything creative that you make, anything design that you make, anything engineered you make, intellectual property, anything someone can own practically. Something that a lot of people don't understand about NDAs, and that perhaps scares a lot of young artists when they're starting off, and a lot of dumb business people don't seem to get, is that NDAs only protect things or revelations and disclosures that could damage the business development, the financial release of a project. A classic example that I usually point to of someone who didn't understand how an NDA worked. I had a friend who's a drummer who did some recording as a percussionist on a Jonas Brothers release. And he signed an NDA, as you would for any major label project, basically saying not to talk about it. And he was terrified about this NDA because he's like, I don't know what I can say. I can't acknowledge that this thing exists. I can't pretend, or I can't claim there's a record. I can't say that I worked on it. What do I do? What do I do? And I looked at his contract and I was like, okay, well, no, that's not what this says. Just to explain, they've announced that there's a record already. So you saying that there's a record is not a disclosure that would break your NDA, 1. 2, they are an American pop band, and they've said that this next record is going to be pop. So the disclosure that there are drums on it does not impact the sales. 3, you are not a famous entity. You are not a known character. And disclosure that you did percussion does not impact sales because you do not currently have brand recognition. So no, actually, they can't really go after you if you were to disclose any of those things at this particular point. You couldn't tell people what the song is if they haven't revealed what song it is. You couldn't share the song online. That would be inappropriate. That would damage the release of the song. But you are technically within your right to say you were a drummer working on this project that is coming soon. That would be fine. That does not violate your NDA. But, people get scared of these things and they don't know how they work and they figure they're not lawyers. They don't want to mess with it. And that's a completely reasonable concern. If you're not a lawyer, don't fuck with legal shit. Don't make dumb decisions because you don't understand the law. But also, don't be afraid of legal consequences for things that don't exist. A lot of times, you're going to find developers or animation studios or creators, businesses, will try to take advantage of the fact that you don't know your rights to get you to give them things that you don't have to. as an example in the music world, anytime that a piece of music is created, that copyright is automatically created, it is developed, it is owned by the creator, and depending on what jurisdiction you're in, where you're based, certain authorship moral rights are automatically existent no matter what, just period. Meaning that if a company wants to not credit you, or if they want to say, soundtrack by Valve, because, I don't know, maybe Valve did that on Spotify recently, instead of saying soundtrack by Mike Morawski, who scored that game and did the actual work, not a faceless entity. In order for Valve to do that, you would have to sign over certain rights that they do not have. That is leverage that if they really want it, you make them pay for. And I guarantee you, there are a ton of companies who will ask you for these things because they understand it, but there are just as many companies who will ask you for these things without understanding it. And the end result is that, especially on the independent side, on the smaller side, there are going to be a lot of things you work on where you come to realize that you could be maintaining ownership on this, and that could be contributing significantly to your ability to generate passive income streams over the long term. As a great example of sometimes companies fuck this up, I'm not going to tell you which company this is because I am not going to violate my friend's NDA, even though he violated it with me by telling me. There is a major video game franchise. I don't know, we'll say that it's one of the top 5 highest selling franchises of all time that doesn't actually own the main theme of that game. They don't own the rights to it, meaning that every single time they make a new game and they use this theme in every single one of their games, they have to pay for that through the nose because it's a fresh negotiation with the composer every single time. The fact that the composer maintained their ownership on the very first title way back in the 1980s when this happened has basically meant that without doing any other work, and they kept working because they wanted to, but without doing any other work, they will graduate 100 millionaire, just straight up, like without anything else, purely off the sheer scale of the licensing agreement that they ultimately came to with that company, which should tell you that that's like a wild thing, but that happens to artists too. That happens to musicians. That happens to animators. That happens to anyone who maintains ownership of their IP and is able to get away with doing it and ends up on a very successful project. So all of that said, these are kind of some of the things that I wish I'd known when I was in school, when I was graduating, and hopefully some of them are helpful for you guys. With all that said, I'd like to kind of open the floor to some general questions for you guys to ask me about the things that you want to do, the fields you're going into, or you can ask me about my career, some of the projects I've worked on. I'm going to link to my credits page over here in the chat so that you guys can see that side of things. And if you have any questions, just go ahead, take a shot, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Feel free to speak up on mute or type the question in the chat.
Either is fine.
I got one. I'm just trying to phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Eldridge signed on, by the way, Mason.
I see. Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
Hi, Mason.
It's good to see you. I hope everything's going well.
Yeah, it's going okay.
I do have a question. I want to know what's your most favorite project that you worked on.
Favorite project I worked on. Couple of answers to that, and I'll do my best to answer them. When I was a kid, the reason that I got into music was because I was a huge gamer. Obviously, I still am by the everything about me. And the game that I played the most to this day was Super Smash Bros. So Super Smash Bros. Wii U and 3DS was my very first credit. My first major professional credit, I should say. And
Pretty cool.
yeah, that was a mind fuck. Like, that was literally my motivation for getting into music. And through sheer dumb luck, I literally probably couldn't replicate this if I tried. When I was 20 years old, I got called in to record on the soundtrack for it. I was still in college at the time. It was pure dumb luck.
Do you have IP? Do you have IP?
No, God.
No?
No, I don't own jack. For Nintendo projects, they're very good about that. Nintendo
I guess.
are on point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Who's
will. But
your favorite character in Smash Bros? Who's your favorite? I love Smash Bros, so that's why I asked too. What's your favorite character?
I play everyone basically. So like this is actually how I play every video game. I've always been one of those people who's like really hyperactive with video games, and like I will go nuts if I can only play one character if I do the thing. So like in fighting games, I play everyone. In like MOBAs, I play everyone. And usually I get really good with everyone up to a certain bar, and I don't really have like a main. Like I'll just pick random when I'm playing against my friends, and I'll just random every single time because I don't have to pick a new character. And like that'll like I'll enjoy that. But like right now for Smash Ultimate, I've got like 45 or 46 characters in Elite Smash at the moment. So like I love Smash Bros. What can I say? It is one of my favorite games. I play Teamfight Tactics. I like basically every build in that. I play Smash Bros. I like basically every character in that. I will be playing Smash Bros. Tonight at like 5 p.m. when Steve releases.
Those are all good games.
I'm hype. I'm excited. But
nice.
Yeah. Smash Bros. Is a big one for me. One of the most probably pivotal jobs that I started, the RWBY soundtrack was my first job after college and kind of set the trajectory of my career from then on out. So I'm tremendously grateful to Jeff for giving me that opportunity. As far as my favorite work experience, the most fun project that I've ever been on, God, I will answer with two things. I would say that the most fun has been my charity work over this last year or so. I've sold over 3,000 vinyl records for charity causes, for COVID relief, things like that, collaborating with large artists in the anime industry. So, like, I worked with the Cowboy Bebop franchise and Yoko Kanno, the Seatbelts, Funimation, the original animation studio Sunrise. On like, I music directed a huge Real Folk Blues charity arrangement that we sold on vinyl. And then I basically did the exact same thing a few months later, collaborating with My Hero Academia and Yuki Hayashi and pretty much the entire cast of My Hero Academia. And like an absolute shit ton of special guest artists on both of those. Guthrie Govan did a guitar solo on one of them. Like, I don't even know how to explain it at this point. It's goofy nonsense. There were like 120 special guest artists all combined between the two tracks. So those have been some of my favorite things to work on emotionally. And finally, if we're talking monetarily, Hell's Kitchen, because that one paid like $15,000 and took me about 9 minutes. So like categorically, whenever I talk about how much I would like to get paid, I always tell people, just give me the Hell's Kitchen rate. Because like it worked out to something like $45,000 an hour or something. It was something goofy like that. I was like, yeah, sure, that's what I think I'm worth. Like, let's just go with that. But yeah, that's kind of my answer. From Richard Diego, I see, as someone going to the field of music, I'm curious as to what type of things go into a demo reel. Obviously, you'd want to focus on your particular skill set, but would you look to show off your skill set or specialization? What I would say is that every single demo reel you make should be custom to the specific job that you're applying for. So like, I don't really think that you need a general demo reel unless you're applying to a general job. And there aren't really a ton of those. If you're applying for a music position with Tencent, for example, since that would mean you're applying to me, I would expect you to look at what games we're publishing. We're probably going to tell you what kind of music we're looking for in the application, and then build your reel accordingly. You know, do the action music, do the fantasy, show me that you can do epic orchestra synthesizer, like, you know, show me that you can do the thing that we need. And do that for every single project. If you're going to work on an 8-bit project, your demo reel should probably mostly be 8-bit stuff. Like, you might want to show off 1 or 2 other things you can do just for the range example, but you mostly want to be showing people that you're good at the specific thing they're hiring for. And if you're not good at that, if you're good at other things and you're hoping they'll change their mind, that might not be a project that you're a great fit for. You know what I mean? To follow the rest of the question, like if you did scoring of music but also do mixing, assuming you're still in college and done very little, if any, professional work, would you show that you do mixing as well, or would you leave that off to the side in favor of scoring? What I would say with mixing as an example is, like, showcase the scoring work of your own that you mixed and make it clear that you did both. And really, you're not ever going to be getting hired for a job. Like, if a job is small enough that they expect you to be mixing your own score, they expect you to do that, then it's probably also small enough that they don't understand that they're asking you to do that, because they probably don't know anything about music. So at that point, they're probably just looking for someone who knows music. If you're going for a professional company that's big enough that you would never have to mix your own score, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to showcase that you're also a good mix engineer, and so on. Nelson asks, what does a typical workday look like for you at Tencent? How do you manage your time in between work, before and after a work shift? Well, for one, I don't have work shifts. This is by far, like, this is my favorite thing to be able to say about my job. I'm in charge of the North American game audio department for my sector of the company. And the unspoken benefit of being in charge of your department for a continent is that the closest people who can tell you what to do are in a very, very different time zone. None of the people who I answer to are ever awake during a workday. So from their perspective, I'm always working remote. Like, I'm not in the office in China, so by definition, I'm working remotely, which means there's nothing stopping me, even before COVID, from working remote 24/7 if I want to. There was never anything tying me to the office, meaning that my workday is very flexible and kind of looks like whatever I want it to, because I have the agency and freedom to make it look like whatever I want to. For me, I was a big fan of, I'm pretty big on relationship building and connecting with people as in ways and means of solving problems. And my work for Tencent is essentially problem solving over a large company scale. So, like, to a certain degree, hold on 1 second. This is, I have to answer this really quickly. 1 second. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
This is the mail.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I bought an Oculus Quest 2, and I think that was it getting delivered. Fuck yeah.
I bought one too. Mine's is coming in the 19th. I bought it a little later.
Nice.
Is this because of Prime Day or what's going on?
Oh, no. I bought it like the second they... for reasons that I cannot disclose, I'm very excited about the Oculus Quest 2. I think that it's going to be dope.
Oh, you can't even say why you're excited.
I've had reasons to feel like it's going to be dope. And anyways, if you like VR, I think it's a great choice.
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, as far as what I do for Tencent, I am a problem solver. And if it has to do with the audio department, I solve that problem. So for example, if we're looking to license a certain song, license the IP of a certain artist and do like a collaborative thing with them, I'm the person who will reach out to their agent and negotiate terms. And because of the position I have, I'm empowered to determine those terms on behalf of Tencent and then just bring them back to the legal department and be done with it. So that's kind of the major difference between, say, me and what you might define as a traditional coordinator who is more of an in-between position. If we're looking to release a soundtrack, I will decide what label we want to collaborate with, choose them, make it happen. If we're hiring for a game, I will determine who we should work with, choose the vendor companies, choose the composers. If we're hiring internally, I'm involved on that hiring process. You get the picture. And so basically anything with the audio department is my problem. And the main difference is that this means that I don't usually have to get as deep on individual game titles. I'm really more concerned with the department. If we're building new studios, new building facilities, I'm designing studios. If we've got a new game coming that we need certain type of music for, I might be involved initially to decide who should be working on it and the general direction, but I have audio directors who will deal with the minutia of that title and making sure to execute on it. And I'm really more of a quality assurance pass at the end there to make sure that they hit the mark. So hopefully that kind of explains how it works for me. Nelson asks, or Velvet asks, would you suggest learning classical music theory before attempting to create music at all? No. I think that music theory is important. I think it's valuable. I don't know that I would say classical music theory is the be-all and end-all. I think Adam Neely had a great video on this a while back. You could kind of replace the term classical music theory with music theory of the Romantic and classical period from the late 1700s. And like, would you think that it's really important for you to understand the writing processes of music of the late 1700s in order for you to write compelling music right now? No. Would it hurt you? God, no. No, it'd be a useful skill. It would give you a framework and reference and to understand a lot of things that we do nowadays. Obviously, if you're talking about music production, film score, things like that, a lot of major composers are influenced by their predecessors. And this chain of influence goes back literal centuries. Yeah, hold on. I'm clicking the link to make sure it's the right one.
Welcome to Trade.
No, it's not actually. Hold on. Here, I'm gonna actually link it.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how good like full loops are these days and what you can do not knowing anything.
Oh yeah, like you don't have to know music theory to produce it. Hans Zimmer can barely read music, and he's Hans Zimmer. He's like one of the most successful film composers of all time. But absolutely, learning how to read music, learning how to interpret music, these things are all valuable skills. But something to remember with regards to classical music theory is that classical music theory is a framework that teaches you how to assess music that was written basically by the people who classical music theorists wanted you to be able to assess. Classical music theory doesn't do such a hot job of analyzing jazz music, for example, or pop music, or hip-hop, or basically anything that wasn't made by white Germans in like the 1820s. And if you're thinking, well, whatever I have to write for this project, I really need to sound like white Germans from the 1820s, then having a really keen understanding of music theory is going to provide you with the context and understanding to develop that authentically and deliver. And if your project needs perhaps more hip-hop production skills or it needs country music production skills, it needs jazz production skills, it needs any kind of genre that started after, 1860, maybe you need a wider range of music theory. And there are other forms of music theory beyond just classical theory. George Russell with his Lydian chromatic concepts theory, basically creating a compelling music theory dogma that would help assess jazz music. Fucking awesome, super useful, super valuable. Not usually taught in most classical programs.
Wait, what's the name of that? Who's the name?
George Russell wrote a book, Lydian Chromatic Concepts. He wrote it in like the 1950s. And I would argue it's like one of the most valuable ways of like reading and interpreting jazz music, for example. It's a great way of taking music theory like as traditionally taught and then using it to analyze more modern concepts effectively. But even then, music theory has a lot of limitations, at least in the way that it's traditionally taught. It is very much something that I would say is good horizontally and vertically, but maybe not so much on the z-axis. And what I mean by that is horizontally, it's really good at analyzing the progression from chord to chord to chord and saying how these chords relate to each other. It's really good at going vertically. It understands how melody interacts with harmony and how these things change over time. And it's not so great on the z-axis, which I think is where most of the information really is. It doesn't really give you a ton of great ways to assess timbre and texture. All the things that you need to be a sound designer, for example, are mostly around texture and the ability to process sound and to understand what makes sound. Music theory doesn't really teach you any of that stuff.
And this is all this. Sorry to interrupt, Mason. You're really approaching this from a composer point of view.
Oh yeah,
right?
but
because you sit,
I would
in
say
that seat
for everything.
Yeah, but like as a performer, it might be useful to have this vocabulary if you're jamming with people.
Here's what I'd argue. I agree 100%, and I am a performer. I'm a recording artist too. I'm a huge proponent of music theory. My graduate degree was in music theory.
Yeah.
But because it's something that I care so passionately about, I also need to like call it out on the bullshit it's wrong.
Yeah.
Music theory is notoriously shit at rhythm. It can like, you can notate rhythm, yeah, sure. But music theory doesn't have a lot of a great way of analyzing rhythm for harmonic information and like musical theory analysis purposes. It's kind of like the ongoing gag that like one of the things that theorists will sometimes shit on with like hip hop music will be like, oh, you're basically just doing like a looping bass rhythm or whatever. Just like there's like very little harmonic information. There's like no chords going on. This is super lame. This isn't intellectual music. It's like, no, there's tons of shit that's going on here. And your system doesn't have any way to analyze any of it because you're analyzing it by standards that have nothing to do with what it's here to talk about. I'm sure that like people who are really well-versed at analyzing rap music, for example, would get really fucking bored with the lyricism in most classical works from the 1800s. Yeah, and to a certain extent, it is apples to oranges. Here's what I would say. Music theory, classical music theory, is a way of kind of analyzing and describing a food almost. And it can be very effective at, we'll say maybe it's good at like American food. I don't know. Generic example. Maybe it's real. We'll say it's actually, let's just go with the real thing. It's really good at analyzing German and kind of Italian food. And it gives you a great vocabulary for how to talk about German and Italian food. And you can really describe it and you can really get into the texture and taste. But, you know, the second someone asks you to talk about like the umami flavor of something in Japanese food, suddenly you discover that you don't even know what most of the ingredients are and you don't know how to talk about it. And like you can understand it on a surface level, but you don't know how any of it is made. And all of a sudden you realize how many holes there are in this system that prior to that point maybe felt like it covered absolutely everything. So yeah, is music theory important? Yeah, I would say categorically it is a super valuable thing to learn. It's not the be all, it's not the end all, and you should understand that the people who crafted the modern system that you understand had agendas, some of which are incredibly problematic. The literal father of modern theory, Heinrich Schenker, was a literal Nazi. And like the entire concept and the way that he built his system of Schenkerian analysis is basically, yo, this set of perfect 12 German composers is the height of perfect music. And obviously that's not fucking true. So like, you know, your mileage may vary is what I'm going to say on it.
Awesome.
Richard asks, how would you go looking for active entry-level music work with COVID having the world shut down right now? Is this something you'd look for on job hunting sites, or would you go looking locally? I would argue that local is always going to be more effective just because at the end of the day, and I'm not talking COVID yet. I'm going to address COVID in a second. At the end of the day, most opportunities aren't ever actually posted on job sites. The vast, vast majority of opportunities are word of mouth. They are done directly, and you only really get a shot at them if you know someone who's in the know. So building up a network of people, getting involved in your local community, in your game dev community or your animation community, making friends is the way that you're going to find out about these things when the opportunity comes up. Otherwise, if you're only going by job site postings, every single one of those is going to get north of 300 applications just by default. And it doesn't matter how good you are. There's a good chance that the person who's reading that application is just going to stop after they've seen like 30 and pick one of the first 30. And if you miss that first 30, which you probably will, you literally never had a shot. And as far as COVID goes, it's a shitty time to be starting a career. It's just fucking hard right now. But you can still be investing in online communities, building relationships with your classmates, building connections with the people you're already working on stuff with, and making sure that you're increasing the quality of the work that you're doing right now so that when COVID ends and you do start going to events again and seeing people IRL and grabbing those coffee lunch meetings, your work is as good as possible. Sarah asks, what would you suggest for creating independent projects to help build your portfolio? Are quick projects better to show for the sake of filling your website, or are few projects that take more time the way to go? I would say go with what you're excited by. Obviously, there's like the minor asterisk of like, oh, don't do something that is so ungodly hard and so ungodly difficult that you never actually finish it. But like, if all you're doing is tiny things that like took you like 30 minutes to do or whatever, took you an hour to do, then the odds are the people who are assessing it also feel they could have done it in an hour. So maybe that won't impress them that much. Show them your ingenuity, show them your world building. If you're an animator and your goal is to one day have your own animated show, then, you know, create an original animation of your world. Like, do concept drawings of the main characters, do your plot rundown of what you think the world would be like, your season 1, like a Bible pitch, basically. And then do an animation from it, like, you know, a 10 to 30 second animation, something sizable that people can look and see and realize, wow, she's thought about this. This is what it would look like and feel like. Produce it to the nines, make it an amazing project. And then, yeah, no, that's something that you can stand by in any application that you ever go to and say, hey, I did this thing. And it will impress people, just categorically. Original work is always going to impress people more than, like, borrowed work or work that's done for someone else at the end of the day. It's because, like, there's just a difference of scale if you have to also create the concept and make it feel natural and create the world while also making it interesting and filling in. Because, like, it's really easy for someone to Like if I work on like a Sonic the Hedgehog game and then I just go on my website and I write, here's this song I did for Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, that's really cool. Mission accomplished. That's going to impress some people. But you know what's going to arguably impress people even more? If I have an original concept, original world that's on here, and I've developed it really well, have my own creative like vision of how I'm doing it, and I have this original song, and it's that good, like that's the kind of thing that'll get you hired onto Sonic the Hedgehog, if that makes sense.
I got a question.
Sure thing.
Let's say like you said with Sonic the Hedgehog thing. Do you think it'll be better, like let's say if I want to work for Sega in the Sonic team, show like, hey, here's my original ideas and stuff, and I could do Sonic stuff if you put me here. Would you want that, or you think it'll be smarter just to go, here's my original ideas, just original?
I would go original. Here's how I would think of it. Especially when you're starting out, you're probably, I don't know you, I'm just going to assume that you're really talented and good at what you do. But I'm
stop.
Guarantee 100% that 3 years from now, when you graduated from college and you're looking back on your work, you're going to be like, oh God, this is terrible compared to what I can do now. And the things that will tend to age the worst are going to be things that you tried to copy from other people, because your ability to spot the detail work of how they compelled or how they created what they were doing is just not as well developed when you're still a student. That's the thing that you pick up when you're on the job and you have to work for those companies, and you learn how to analyze how their workflow was on previous things. So I guarantee you, with Sonic as an example, if you come in to an application for Sega and you're showing them your, artistic doing Sonic the Hedgehog stuff, it's going to look like fan art. And that's probably not usually something that you want. That's not going to come off the way that you want it to. Whereas if you come in with your own original IP, your own original concepts, there is no similar stigma associated with it. Moreover, one of the challenges is that you're basically putting yourself behind immediately whenever you are doing something the original company did. Because, one, is the person who did this thing that you're doing your version of involved in your interview process? If so, are they going to feel insulted, like you think you can do their job better than they did? Are they going to feel that you missed the point because they know the job better than anyone else, and therefore they have the most ability to realize the things you might have accidentally done wrong? And on and on, there are so many different reasons why this can come together and kind of bite you in the ass. Parody can be slightly better, because you're still putting an original twist at that point. But understand that at the end of the day, they are going to be more familiar with their IP than anyone else. I guarantee you, if you come in with your Sonic sound redesign, for example, your sound design thing where you took all original sound effects for a Sonic video and you bring that to Sega, they're going to know whether or not you did something wrong way faster than if it was an original project, because they did the original Sonic thing that you're bringing to them. They know how it's supposed to sound, and literally anything that you changed is subject to them feeling you did that wrong rather than a difference of opinion. Whereas anything that's original, it's probably a difference of opinion. You may not have done it wrong. And that's a huge, that's just a huge pit to dig yourself into before you're even going into the actual application process, because there's no reason that you have to do that. There's nothing stopping you from just doing your own work, doing an original piece, doing original art that they don't have the frame of reference of. You can do stuff that's influenced in it, you can do stuff in an animated style, in a zany style, in a Caltech style, whatever the fuck you're doing. But if I come in here and I show you my original Sonic the Hedgehog character design, that's just going to look like an OC. That's going to look like something that came out of DeviantArt, even if I did it really well. And if I'm not perfectly on the fucking ball, then they're just going to feel that you don't understand what works about their character. how many applications for work do I look at each week? So I only look at applications when I'm hiring, obviously, and I'm not always hiring. I would say for my last job opening, I hired an in-house composer position 9 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that. It was over the winter, give or take.
That was a one-off project?
No, it was an in-house salaried role.
Oh, okay.
6-figure job. It was a good position.
So do you deal with like, I need someone to just do this?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I also deal with those, but there aren't applications for that. That's different.
But that's how you get your foot in the door. You're gonna want somebody to do that for you before they apply for the 6-figure thing.
Well, no, actually it's usually kind of unrelated.
Okay.
For people who want the salary positions, like they just need to be people who are available to become my employees. When I'm doing outsource work like that, I'm looking for people who run freelance companies or vendor companies, or I'm not looking for the same people who would be working in-house for me. It's different type of, I am a different client in those situations. As for when I'm hiring in-house, for that one, I parsed through, I think, 655 applications, I want to say. And I actually read all of them. I listened to all of them. It took me the better part of about 2 months to get through, just to get through everything. And then the hiring process, wherein I did the interviews and decided who I wanted to pick. And then they went through, there's like a 5-interview process, basically. It basically took from when I put the posting up to when I hired about 6 months.
Wow.
And that's, for large companies, that can be kind of normal. A lot of times you'll apply for something and you don't hear back in like a week or two and you think, I guess I didn't get it. And it's like, nope, there's just so many applications. You got to remember that, especially for people who are working on like a day-to-day in-office thing, if they have 8 hours a day and they have one person who's reviewing the first level of applications, and they receive 600 applications, and each application takes, I don't know, 5 to 15 minutes to parse through. Like, you do the math, if all they're doing is applications, it will take them weeks to get through that. If literally all they're doing, and you're assuming that this person has nothing else that is their job. The odds are they're actually working on, like, because the people who are doing that first level of parsing are probably in the art department or the audio department or whatever. Most of their time is probably not spent parsing applications. It's probably mostly spent doing art or doing sound. So yeah, it can take a while. Richard asks, when you were still in college and learning your craft, did you have any practice routines that you used to improve? Did you practice certain aspects on certain days? Did you focus on a particular aspect until you felt you excelled at it? Yeah, no. So I mostly, when I was in college, I spent a lot of time working on ledge trapping. Once I felt like I was getting pretty good at that, I started generally to try and get better at 2-framing. I wanted to make sure that I was really good at ledge guarding in general. And then I started to work on like my general matchups and things like that. I didn't practice so much when I was in college. I played video games. And I would argue that was research. Galaxy brain active right there. It works. But like, in all seriousness, I think that the most valuable shit that I did in college was I played video games with my friends and I built relationships and like I connected with people, and ultimately those are the things that got me work. I have an ongoing joke that I usually say during these talks where like the guitar soloist who I hire for blues recordings, I hire him because he was the best at speedrunning Sonic Adventure 2. Not usually the hiring criteria that you figure, but the way that I argue and justify it is this. For any job that you're going to get hired, no matter where it is, what industry, period, art, music, whatever. If you're in the creative arts, there is a minimum bar that you have to reach to be able to be hired. You must be yay good, for example. And that bar is really high. I would be willing to say that bar immediately disqualifies 95% of the people out there. However, if you are good enough to hit that bar, if you exceed that bare minimum, and again, that's the bare minimum. That doesn't get you hired. That is the bare minimum for me to finish reading your application. If you exceed that bar, I no longer care how much better you are than that. You could be the greatest person at your field in history. You could be really good. You might be like a C student who does professional work, but, you know, bare minimum. At that point, once you are above that minimum line, all I care about is your personality, how you fit on the team. Because if you're good enough to do the job, you are good enough to do the job. Like, it's exactly what it says. If you're capable of executing what we need you to do, I don't need you to be capable of executing more than we need you to do, because I only need you to do whatever that minimum definition is. But what I do need is I need someone who is professional, competent, can keep secrets, has a good attitude, and isn't going to inject stress and challenge into a project that doesn't need it. So personality fit is incredibly important. I would argue that during an application, when I'm doing an interview, most of what I'm looking for is the personality. I'm not really trying to suss out whether or not you know what you're talking about or not, because, like, I'll figure out pretty quickly in the interview if you actually know what you're talking about or if you were lying on the application. If you're able to do the job, all I really care about is this person cool? Would I hate myself if I was locked in a room with them for 8 hours a day every single day? If not, they're an option. They're an opportunity. And then I'm just comparing whether or not you're a better fit than whoever else hit that definition. Velvet asks, is there an apprentice culture in the audio engineering world? In general, yeah, I'd say sure. You have to find a mentor. And a mentor is just any person with more experience who's willing to invest time and effort into developing you as a person. And be careful, because there are plenty of people out there who know that you need a mentor, but who also figure they need free labor, and they seem to confuse you doing free labor for them as them mentoring you. That's not true. I would argue that by and large, at least the way that I hire them, the way that I work with them, the way that I generally expect them, an intern is a loss for your company. An intern is generally someone who you hire knowing that by definition, it is costing you more money to have them around than it would to not have them around. They are just not helping you in any way because they're not generating value for you. They're not good enough or knowledgeable enough about their job yet to be at a point where you would hire them to do that job. And you're having to take someone else who you are paying to do their job, and you're taking some of their time away from that job to then be coaching this intern on how to do things, with the knowledge that that intern may not actually work for your company afterward. You might just be like gassing them up so that they can go to your competitor and like help them out. And you do it anyway because it's a good thing to do to help people, and because we all needed help at one point or another. We were all at that point where we needed to be an intern or where we were starting our career. All of which is to say, yeah, there are people out there who are great mentors who will assist you in building your career. Make sure that they're people who actually want to help your career and not just corrupt people looking to save money so that they make more money themselves. Because an intern shouldn't be making your business more profitable. If it's making your business more profitable, that's an employee and they need to be compensated as one. Make sense?
There are lots of recording studios in Boston that just field like, you know, their clientele is just people looking to make their demo, Berklee College of Music students, you know, and they're turning around like this. They're not going like that. You know, they're not, there's no upward trajectory in the sense of like, I'm making music for video games, making a lot of money.
They're just rotating people in and out until they turn out.
And so the intern that works at that studio is truly just helping take out the trash. And then, you know, it is kind of a churning thing that doesn't really So it's just, you got to look at what are they trying to get out of you and what are you trying to get out of them. But I do agree with you in most what you said about that.
Yeah. So a question Richard asks, I see that your room is acoustically treated. How would you go about treating a room that you wouldn't be staying in long term? Because you're on campus and you can't do it, but you want to have a space that works for recording and mixing. So first of all, quick professional disclosure. I am an endorsing artist with RLX Acoustics. So actually, I work with RLX. They literally designed the studio and did the first draft of this place for me. And then I refined the design because I designed studios at this point. And we went from there. And like, they provided everything that you see in the room and a ton of stuff that you don't see because it's not on camera. As far as how you would do it, I would say that for setting up a room, like, the shortest, quickest way that you can improve any room is by treating your corners, getting bass trapping. And a great product that does that effectively, and again, asterisk, I endorse the company, but I would argue that RLX's distressor foam things that you can put in the corner work really well. And if you can't edit the room, if you can't like nail things in, for example, you could literally just get a stack of them, put them in the corner, because it's not like you don't have to have for treatment like that, it doesn't need to be like touching the wall or blocked to the wall or something. It's about blocking the path of audio and where the sound is going, where it diffuses. Having treatment in the corner, actually, technically treatment is a little more effective when there's an air gap between the wall and whatever you're using for your treatment. So for example, the rock wall treatment, the beige one behind me, that's actually 2 inches off the wall. I have it anchored such so that it's not touching straight on the wall. It's got a little bit of space. All of which is to say, technically, if you're talking about short-term solutions, you could just have these things in the room at the key points, stacked up wherever necessary, and that'll work. Like, there's no magic, the thing is on the wall, so it works. Like, this one right here on the door, for example, is mounted. The other one that I have is over here to my side, and it's standing on a mic stand, so that it's in the right position. But technically, I could have put it on anything by that logic. And actually, the mic stand example, I'm going to turn the camera so you can see it, is a good example of a way that you can set up panels, for example, in rooms that are not permanent. So.
Nice.
See that?
Yeah.
Also, for other things that are set up here, I have floating clouds set up in this room.
Whoa.
I have traps in there. There are traps behind me in the closet. On and on,
Wow. That's awesome.
But yeah, part of acoustic treatment is that really you're just trying to solve problems. And the key to solving any problem is to assess it effectively. So in my case, I did a frequency sweep of the room so that I understood where the biases were, like where the noise buildup was, what frequencies were being overemphasized in here. And then I built my treatment solution based on what would be most effective, what would address that problem. And how much money you spend on that kind of thing really just depends on how DIY you are. I technically didn't spend money on this because I'm an endorsing artist and they provided it for me. But if I wasn't working with RLX on this, I honestly would have just built most of this myself, because like you can build one of those traps yourself if you have a little bit of like woodworking know-how with like 4 2x4s and like a thing of rock wall and like a mesh. Like, it's not that hard. It's not like this is like complex scientific equipment. Like, it's really just buy the shit at Home Depot for like $2 and then you're good. Like, if you're willing to put in the effort to do it yourself, you're fine. And a lot of professional studios, that's exactly what they do. That said, if you're looking for a ready-built solution, if you're looking for something that's easy and portable and works well, you know what I recommend. But yeah,
I have a question.
sure thing.
Does the I know like with animation with storyboard artists, they have like tests that they send out to them to like so they can see their skills. Do you ever do that with like audio? Like test out how
So that's actually something that sometimes I actually vary compared to other companies because not everyone likes to do music tests, but I do. I usually have a requirement wherein I will find when I'm at that process with composers, we will find a day that works so that they have 24 hours notice and they know that they're going to be setting the day aside to do the test or whatever to take the shot at it. And we'll usually do a compensated test because like I'm not a big fan of people doing work for free or whatever. And they go into it knowing that it may or may not work out. I will assign them a cue on 24 hours notice. It'll be usually a minute long interactive. I will give them footage that they work to. I will mention some of the game states and they have to identify others themselves. And they have to create it and then implement it in whichever audio implementations middleware solution I give them. So sometimes Fmod or Wise or Unreal or whatever that project happens to be using, whatever they decided on in development. And basically, I'll just see what they can do in 24 hours. And the end result is that, like, I know that they can't really fudge it because I will always make sure to choose something that's weird enough that they couldn't have done it in some other way. Like, they couldn't just be pulling something they already had and working on it.
Can you give an example?
Let's see. So usually what I'll do, for example, is I will name a few specific elements that they wouldn't be able to duplicate otherwise. So like, for example, there's been a couple of times where what I would do is I'll request a specific sampled instrument and melodic, like I'll give them like a melody or something, like a bass melody to work with, and I will give them the sample instrument to work with. Or if they're local, I will provide them with a physical instrument of whatever it is. And it's like, all right, like you might be, maybe you've worked on like an Asian influenced epic orchestral thing before, which might be the core of what this particular game's looking for. But I'm willing to bet that you don't own a gukin, that if I hand you one that you've never really played it before, and that if I give you this specific melodic pattern, you hadn't previously written something with it, so you're going to have to make new music with this. Like, it just wouldn't make sense. It would be so much more effort to try and, like, retrofit something to work the way for whatever project than to just do whatever I'm telling them to do. Wow. And the end result is that, like, I don't think I've ever had an issue with, like, plagiarism or anything like that. They always do the thing I ask for, and it's great. But again, I don't have people do tests unless like we're really sure that we would want them, because like we have to be at the point where like we're prepared to pay them for their time for this. Like it is essentially a paid audition. Wow. But yeah. Any other questions?
If we don't have any questions now, like if it's not coming to us or whatever, what is the best way we can maybe send you an email or reach out to you and ask them later?
You can do this. That's my private email. You can go ahead and shoot me emails there. Or if you go to my website, you can use the contact form. That's fine. It goes to the same place. So if you forget that, you can just remember, go to my website and that'll work.
Okay.
But yeah, if we don't have any other questions, then...
I have a question.
Oh, okay. What's up?
So, I heard you work on The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
What was that like? What season did you work on?
Seasons 9 and 10, I want to say.
9 and 10.
Either 8 and 9 or 9 and 10. I don't really remember. It was like 2 years-ish back ago, 2.5 years-ish back ago. I was working as a recording artist on a bunch of random cues on cello, voice, and guitar. And it was fun. The first cue that I ever did on that show, they had asked for something that, God bless them, they were like, we really want this on electric guitar with an EBow, which I have an EBow. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Because that'll give us the right sound. And I was just like, no, it won't. This doesn't sound the way that you think it does. Like, they sent me the cue and they're like, this is what we think it'll sound in our mock-up. And I was like, no, it won't. Have you ever seen Wicked? It's going to sound like that. But like, they insisted and I was like, okay. I'm going to record what you told me to record on electric guitar on EBow, and I'll send it to you. You can do what you want. And also, I'm going to record whatever I think would solve this problem. And you have the option, it's free of charge. I'm just throwing it in for you. And you guys just let me know which one ended up working so that I know whether or not I was right and I can use this story for educational purposes. And I sent them the thing. And then I also recorded a take on electric cello. I have a 6-string electric cello. Woohoo.
Nice.
It's like the coolest thing ever. And I sent them that. And they were like, yeah, we used the second thing you sent us. It worked really well. I was like, yeah, that's because it's actually made to do this. And EBow guitar does not sound like that whatsoever. That's not why you use an EBow. It does not replicate classical string experience. It's basically just a magnet vibrating your humbucker. It's vibrating the strings so that it sustains forever, but it doesn't work the way you think it does.
Did you take cello lessons as a kid?
Yeah, cello was my original instrument. I started when I was 5.
Awesome.
I've been playing cello for well over 20 years at this point.
Nice.
So I got a question.
Sure thing, Dion.
The Cowboy Bebop thing. So what is that exactly? You like made a mix to it? You cleaned it up? Oh, thank you.
Hold on. All right, you can share.
Yeah, I'm linking it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
So
if you need a screen share, I you're allowed to now. Sorry, I had it.
I wasn't even gonna bother. Do you guys hear audio from my computer if I do this?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you do? And I'm just gonna fucking screen share. Fuck it.
Nice.
Hold on. Let's do this. Share screen. Google Chrome. I collaborated with Funimation and the original animation studio Sunrise to basically do a tribute for COVID relief back in May with a bunch of special guest artists for all kinds of and on. It's like a 7-minute long thing. But to basically jump to the end or whatever.
Everything that they know, but their finger was slow.
This is the entire band. This is the original soundtrack.
Whatever happens. I see one eye through the past and I keep on back in the present. I used to back in the end and now I'm asking the questions. Grasping my weapon on top of my exit. I kill me the dragon. I'm back on the steps of the gate. They waiting for me. Let me carry the weight. Bang.
That's
See you, Space Cowboy.
The original voice actor for Spike, for the main character or whatever. But like, you get the picture. So basically I arranged, music directed, coordinated that entire thing, got all the artists involved, did all the licensing, made it happen. And then we sold it as a limited edition vinyl that sold, I think, 2,800 copies, something like that, in about a month. And basically, like, it was just a big thing for COVID relief. We raised over $50,000 for COVID relief.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, it was super cool. Childhood mission accomplished. I'm now on the Cowboy Bebop Wikipedia page. Fuck yeah. We take those. Like,
nice.
Anything counts. Like, fuck it,
So, go ahead.
But yeah. I'm linking it in the chat in case you want to check it out later.
You're where you want to be location wise, but so much of what you do is remote anyway.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you could be in Bali doing what you're doing?
Yeah. Pretty much. I moved to LA because Tencent told me I had to be in Los Angeles to be here. And then the second I showed up and moved in, it quickly became apparent that that was just corporate saying that because they didn't understand how this worked, and that the actual audio department could give less of a shit because they were like, well, I mean, we like that you're in Los Angeles because a lot of music is there, right? And I was like, yeah, no, I agree. Like, so it's easy for you to like go out and meet people and like hold meetings in person there, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, probably better than Boston. And they're like, okay, then it's good that you're in Los Angeles. We don't care if you're next to the office or anything. So like,
the weather's nicer.
I don't live particularly close to our offices here. I'm actually not that far. I'm maybe 20 minutes away, which in LA terms is really close. But like, I've never once even driven to the office in my current apartment. I live in West Hollywood nowadays.
So wait, when you're working with other musicians or other composers, whatever, that's all remote.
That's all remote. Yeah, that's all remote. Like 100%.
100%. You never go to someone's studio.
No, God, no. Why would I? I have this. Like, there's, and I mean, I think that that's par for the course for how most music works and most animation. Like, no one's out here when they hire you for animation or whatever. If you're on like a freelance project, no one's like, all right, now come in and work in our offices on your desk on your laptop.
No.
Like, what the fuck does that mean? No, you're just gonna work at home and do the job. And it's the exact same thing here.
So
I'm hired on a remote project, and like, you know, I'm not an employee of that company, which Tencent's the only company I'm an employee of, and that's only been for the last little over a year.
Yeah.
You know, I work wherever I want to because that's my prerogative.
Can you talk to us a split second about software like DAWs? You know, what do you use on daily?
I mostly, I'm very much Maverick on this. I mostly use 2 rocks, and I use 1 rock to chip sound waves into the second rock. And then I found that that's a great way. No, I'm sorry. So personally, I work on Mac. I'm currently running a Mac Pro 7.1, the 2019 Mac Pro Redux. And I mostly work with Logic Pro. That's a personal choice. I actually, funnily enough, require most of my audio department to work on Reaper. Which, you know, we don't need to get into the fact that I'm making other people work on software that I don't work on. But that's only because I acknowledge that it is objectively superior for what I need them to do. And I just don't do sound design, so that's not really my problem.
Why use the subpar DAW? I mean,
because I like Logic. Fuck you. Like,
no, Reaper. Reaper is the cheaper one. Why do you?
Yeah, but cheap has nothing to do with it. Reaper is way more functional than Logic is. Are you kidding me? Reaper is like any day. Like, let me put it like this. Will Roger, amazing composer, Mortal Kombat 11, Destiny 2, Call of Duty World War II. He scored all of World War II, the entire game, hours of music in a single session just to prove a point. Like, just to be like, oh yeah, no, this won't do thing. Nothing's going to corrupt. It's going to be stable. It's going to work fine. I can play this entire session in one thing without having to worry. And it works. Sound designers, the tools that are in Reaper are so much more effective, so much more valuable for audio editing than in basically any DAW, I would say, with the
exception. Are you talking about because it's just faster?
It is more stable. It is faster. It is much more customizable than any other DAW universally.
Okay, how about plugins?
The plugins that are built in are pretty decent, but let's be real for a moment. If you're a professional working on this stuff, there are a lot of times that you're not using built-in plugins. Right. I don't care how good the tuning in Cubase is, which, by the way, it's actually pretty good. Yeah. I'm using Melodyne. I'm not using a built-in plugin or a pre-existing one. I don't care how good the EQ is in Logic, which, by the way, I think that the Logic equalizers are pretty darn good. I'm mostly using FabFilter ones. I don't really care how good the compressor is in Pro Tools, which you get the drill. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm probably using something by Waves.
And for outside work, you're just asking for WAV files. You don't care what the fuck they use, right?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm getting audio files. Most of the time, I don't get people to send me their sessions because I don't want them.
Exactly.
I want them sending me audio stems, the audio pieces. It's kind of like if it were a painting, if we were talking about like a virtual drawing or whatever, I'm asking them to send me layers, if that makes sense. And with audio, that's what I'm telling them to do. Do I have any tips for naming conventions?
Nice.
Have them. So personally, and this is like totally arbitrary. This is legitimately totally arbitrary. It's just how I do it, and therefore how everyone who works for me has to do it. I am a big fan of the following.
Okay.
Let's have it.
_project_. I'm typing this out as we go, so hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna learn Reaper next week, guys. they all get audition for free, so I don't want to have to buy stuff,
Here's my logic behind this, by the way.
Yeah.
I go date, project location, or character, name, version. And the reason why is because suppose you're a sound designer and you have punch.wave. A punch, you generally know what a punch is going to sound like. You're probably pretty sure about it. But if you're working on a really large title, like an MMORPG, for example, there might be 400 or 500 different characters with a punch animation. So just being a punch isn't enough. Moreover, I want to know what something is going to sound like before I've actually heard it. And, if something is just labeled punch game, then I'm like, okay, again, I don't know what character this is. I don't know if this is a punch from level 1 Rat Bard, boo. Or if this is punch from God King Dragon Slayer Xerxes, who has more bass in his punch than we do in the main theme. Very different impact sound.
The file name must be as big as the screen.
Yeah. I want to have a project name in this file because sometimes, this has happened before, you'll have games get built on the engines of previously developed games. And there are certain studios that are particularly guilty of this that we've worked with in the past, where they have assets that they're using that were developed in, 3 games ago that you didn't realize were all built on the same thing, but they just kept reusing it, rebuilding it, and the spaghetti goat is getting larger and larger. And so I like to know where it's coming from, so that if I'm looking for more of those assets or things that were made in the same time, I get it. And finally, I want the date in there and the version in there, because if something was made on November 22nd, 2020, that's probably more modern than November 20th, 2020. And I also want a version because sometimes there's multiple iterations in a given day, A to Z. And incidentally, on the very rare occasion that there are more than 26 versions of something in a given day, I have gone through either on certain projects, I'll do version number, or if it's letters, then it'll be like version AA, BB, CC, DD, on and on. But usually I'll do version numbers. Velvet asks, Mason, you've worked on Zombieland Saga. How was it? What was the experience and what it felt like seeing the finished project? So yeah, I was brought on by Funimation for that one for the English release because they wanted to do a Western soundtrack for it. They wanted to make sure they re-recorded all the songs in English, and they wanted someone to produce that, basically. And that's what I did. I produced all the vocals, I made sure they sound good, and I did my best. The challenge is that with the Western dub, Funimation cast people based on who would sound best for the character, not based on whether or not they were professional singers. The Japanese dub, the J-dub, the J version, definitely was casting based on singing as well. So one of the challenges that I was working with is that some of the singers were really good. The actors were great singers. Some of them, needed a lot of coaxing to get there, needed a lot of production to get there. So, you go with what you got. You go with what you can do. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next season. Dennis notes, just because Mason makes his employees use Reaper doesn't mean Studio Next Door doesn't make everyone use Logic. DAW doesn't really matter too much. Plugins, etc., are what matter. To a certain extent, I agree. I do think the DAWs matter because there are certain things that individual studios require that are much more effective with certain DAWs than others. Like, if I have everyone working from a single session and I want people to be able to, like, Perforce style work from that session remotely, I'm probably going to put them on Pro Tools or Cubase. I'm probably not going to put them on Logic. If I'm doing a lot of editing, a lot of audio editing, I'm probably going to put them on Pro Tools, maybe not Logic. If I'm mostly working with MIDI, I'm probably going to put them on Logic or Cubase, not Pro Tools. On and on. Like, all.
How about ADR?
ADR, usually Pro Tools.
Nice.
But I would say that really, like, ADR, I kind of think it depends. The thing with ADR is that most of it is really vocal editing, like it's dialogue chopping, and Pro Tools is just much faster workflow for that than Logic is, or Cubase. Logic and Cubase have much better workflows for virtual instruments, for handling hefty CPU workflows like that.
And we have an FL Studio guy. Richard wants to know.
Oh, yeah. FL Studios, okay. I don't use it. I don't know much about it. It's much more of a real thing nowadays than it was 10 years ago. Because it was basically a toy like 10 years ago. But I mean, a lot of software was pretty shitty 10 years ago. So that's kind of par for the course.
Cool.
I know a couple of people who use FL Studio who really stand by it, in the same way that, like, I know people who use Ableton Live, and, like, I don't get it. I understand why they do. It's good for DJs. It's good for EDM production. I know some sound designers who fucking love it. I don't see the appeal. But then I also don't see the appeal of using Digital Performer after 2004. So, and I will fight people on that one. Most of the DAW wars are very tame, and we all are like, oh, yeah, as long as you're producing music, we love you equally. But if you're using Digital Performer in 2004, fuck you.
Is it like swinging hands type fighting?
Like, I like fists punching, like blacklisting, like that kind of thing. I kid.
That's funny.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think I've got 5 minutes left. If you don't have questions, that just means I get to leave.
Oh man, this has been so awesome, man. Thank you so much. We're really grateful.
I'm always happy to chat. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I am a big proponent of arts education in general, so I love what you guys do here. And I really look forward to whatever this next generation of artists comes up with. You guys are doing some amazing shit.
Awesome. Well, keep in touch. Everybody here, keep in touch with Mason. He's the man.
Yeah, if you want to keep in touch, I'm on Twitter at Mason Lieberman. You can find me on
Facebook. This is a very new movie, Dad. Look.
Oh, golly, it is.
This is Arlo. What do you want to show her? Oh, look at that movie. Yeah, he's got a scary movie.
Arlo.
Jelly Man. Everybody knows Arlo. So,
all right. Well, Arlo's going to take a lecture from here. I'm going to go and give my cat some attention because they are very nice.
Absolutely.
Aww.
She's been waiting this entire time. By the way, for those looking to know, my cats' names are Finn and Ray, which of course are short for Finland and Raytheon. Dumb joke aside, Star Wars, duh. And they are very good cats, except for Finn, who is just the worst. But I love them both, even Finn, who is indeed the worst. Everyone have a nice day.
Awesome.
Add me on whatever social media you want if you have any questions. It's a pleasure chatting with you. Peace,
Thank
Dad.
you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Mason. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mason.